Hi everyone. So, this is all of my 3-star reviews. You know, like anything that's 3 stars or less. These are my reviews. So, the first one I'm going to discuss, I realized this author is just not for me. So, I have picked up other books by this author, and I've decided I'm just going to donate them because I'm just not feeling them. This author has a way of creating heroes that are kind of assholes. Like, they're really not good. And then, like, toward the end of the book, that's when they kind of become, like, more nicer. And at that point, I'm like, I don't really care. I don't really care if this guy gets someone who loves him, because the guy's a major asshole. So, this one here, I ended up listening to on Anyplay. So this is The Duke Buys a Bride. This is called the Rogue Files for this series. So this one here, you got the character of Alice Bell. Now, Alice Bell is married, but she's married in name only to this older gentleman. Now, she got married at 15. To this older gentleman. Now, he's never touched her or anything like that. He's kind of just used her as more of a maid for him. Like, he's taken care of her, like clothed her and, you know, put a roof over her head and gave her food and all that stuff. So in return for him taking care of her, because her father had passed away and he was her father's friend. So in order to kind of, like, you know, help him out, she took care of his children. And now, like, all of his children are grown and they've, you know, gone off and they've gotten married. And so she's, you know, needing another husband, because this guy, who's the older gentleman, this guy's probably in his 60s, he's interested in this widow. And this widow is, oh, she's a harpy. She's very much a harpy. She's a scumbag. I'll just say that. She's a scumbag. She don't care about this other girl. You know, she's just like, oh, I want to marry him and I want her out of the picture, since, you know, for them it's not a love match or anything. So she is going up for auction in this wife auction. She had an arrangement with this other gentleman to essentially buy her, and that way she'd be married to this other guy that she's been friends with for years. So she figures, you know, him and her would go to London. She'd end up getting a job as, like, you know, whether like a seamstress maybe or something like that, and he would go off and do his own thing, and they would be, you know, friends. And then, you know, they were, you know, she obviously was attracted to him, so she figured she'd be married to him and all that stuff, and they would make something, you know, make some kind of marriage, you know. And the guy doesn't show up. The dude just totally skipped out, went to London by himself, and now she's by herself up on this marriage, you know, auction, and she is gonna be sold off to somebody else that she doesn't know, a stranger she doesn't know. So this other guy, Marcus, he's the Duke of Autenbury. He sees that she is up at the auction block, and he thinks this is just atrocious. He's like, this is barbaric. Who, you know, what kind of country is this? You know, because he's an Englishman and he's in Scotland. So it's kind of a different, you know, different custom, different culture. So he's like, you know, who does this? Who goes and puts up a wife on the auction? She could end up being married off to some person who's not going to treat her right. So he ends up buying her. And he doesn't realize that in the paperwork for the auction, he's essentially marrying her. He didn't realize that after he, you know, until after he bought her. So he goes and decides to take her to his home, because he has this home that, you know, is in, you know, Scotland, I believe. And so he's going to take her there so that way she's a maid. But through most of this book, he did not treat her very well. He was a major asshole, and I just didn't like his attitude. I didn't like his attitude. I didn't like his treatment of her. He put her on like a mule or a donkey, you know, kind of thing. Put her on on that and told her to ride that instead of a horse, you know, and it kind of like throughout like their, you know, them staying, you know, at different places, he's like, you know, obviously attracted to her, but doesn't want to admit that he's attracted to her. And just like his treatment of her, I just wasn't a fan. I just thought this guy was just a huge jerk. So this is why I ended up giving it a 3, is that it wasn't until toward the end that the guy really started to be better and treat her better. And at that point, I was just like, dude, I don't care. You know, I don't care. You don't treat her well. So the next book I ended up reading was Tessa Dare, A Week to be Wicked. Now, this is the second book in the Spindle Cove series. This is another one I gave it a 3. I don't know what it is with this series, but there were how many people who were saying they really like the Spindle Cove series. I don't get it. I don't get the appeal. So, this one here, we've got the character of Minerva. So Minerva is very much like a geologist. She loves rocks. She loves dirt. She loves discovering different things, finding different stuff. So she has this, I think it's a plaster foot or something like that she discovered. And she made like a plaster of. And so she wanted to go and show her discovery at this society. And so she needs to get there, and then she can go and get money. So she ends up enlisting the help of, what's his name again? Colin Sandhurst, who is Lord Payne. Now, they started off on the wrong foot. She thinks he's interested in her sister. She does not want him to marry her sister. So she's like, hey, look, I'll marry you. You know, you can marry me, or you can kidnap me and run away with me, kind of thing. And so they go off and do this road trip, and they kind of like get into different scrapes and stuff like that. They deal with highwaymen, different things like that. The thing that kind of irritated me about this book is I was not a fan of Lord Payne. I was not a fan of this guy. He, throughout the book, kept coming up with these porky pies, you know, these complete fabricated stories that he thought were funny to, like, tell with people, you know, to tell to people. And it's like, dude, why? Why do you keep coming up with these stories? You know, it's just really stupid. And then, like, he was getting, like, frustrated with her and, like, kind of, like, taking it out on her. And it's like, dude, why are you taking it out on her? She's the one that, you know, had told you that she would give you money and help you out until your, I don't know, maybe like 25th year or whatever it is, however old it is for him to get, like, his inheritance, you know? And the guy just really was kind of a douche to me. I really was not a fan of this guy. And it wasn't until, like, toward the end of the book that he started, like, being more of a, you know, nicer guy. Calling. And the other thing that irritated me, he kept forgetting her name. You know, her name's Minerva, and he'd call her, like, Marianne or other. I'm like, dude, write it down, because you look like a horse's ass. So I just did not like this guy at all. I did not like this guy. And Minerva, she kind of bored me. She kind of was a boring person. And there were, like, a couple of times where he kind of was like, oh, here, you're going to like this. And she's like, oh, I don't know. You know, like, I don't know if, you know, we should do that. And I'm kind of like, dude, if she's not interested, you know, back off. It just kind of seemed like he was a little forceful, you know, for my taste, and I just wasn't really feeling it. It's like, you have to seduce her, man. You've got to seduce her. Get her interested sexually in you, not be like, oh, here, let's try this. I'm going to put my fingers up in your, you know, and we're going to do that. So one story he told in here was pretending that they were sister and brother. And then that night, they're hearing, like, sex in another room. right? And he's like, oh, good for that person, and he's explaining to her, like, they're doing it, they're having sex. So he gets into the mood where he's like, wants to play with her. So he ends up like, having her orgasm. And the next day, the people he had told his porky pies to, his lies to, saying that they're sister and brother, they're looking at them like, you are horrible people. And they like go off in their stagecoach and everything. And you're like, oh, wow, they probably heard them. They probably heard them playing around the room and thinking that there's some kind of incestuous, stuff going on, And I'm like, ooh, that's creepy. And then she was like, I'm going to be sick. And I'm like, yeah, girl, like, that's creepy. But I'm like, dude, why did you lie? Why are you making up all of these stories? It's not funny. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was funny at all. I thought it was stupid. He just looked like an idiot. And so I'm like, I don't like this guy. This guy is just, eh. So, yeah. So far with this here, I did not like the Spindle Cove series. Not a fan. That's why I ended up giving it a 3. So the other book I ended up reading Rajal's Resonance. This is part of the Ruby Dixon. It's a new series, and it's called The Ice Planet Clones. Now, the clones were kind of like introduced a bit into the Ice Home series. Now, you have to read, with this series, you do not want to start off with this one. You do not want to start off with this one. You want to start off with the Ice Planet Barbarians first, get through that whole series, then delve into Ice Home and get through that whole series. Once you're through Ice Home, you will know enough to where you can get into this one. So, this is a continuated, what is it? What's the term for it? Where it's a continuous series, where it goes through the storyline. So you can't like skip over something. You're gonna miss something. So with this here, it's like Rajal and Tia end up getting snatched out of the fruit cave and end up going underneath the fruit cave into this area that they never even discovered. And you end up finding out there's like these ancestor people under there, that they wear like different clothing and stuff like that. It's a higher temperatured area, it's really warm. Like the fruit cave was always really warm. This is why you could grow fruit there and things like that. So Rajal's down there and Tia's in some other area. He's kind of worried about Tia, even though she was annoying. And he ends up discovering this woman in basically essentially the prison hold with him, Rosalind. So Rosalind, she woke up in this pod and had this wristband on her. I think she ended up taking the wristband off, or she dropped it, or whatever it is. And so she ends up getting taken by the ancestor people. And they're down there, and of course, Rajal, he resonates to her. He starts purring in his chest. So she doesn't know any of that. And they start to become like friends and communicate with each other. And he kind of essentially telling her like, well, you're my mate, we're going to be together and all that stuff. And she doesn't understand all that stuff. So, she's confused, which is understandable. And there was some creepy stuff going down, going on like underneath, because you had like this one person, I think his name was Setnef or something like that, that would show up at their little prison area and would gonna give them food. But then there was this other person that would show up and not say anything to them and kind of give Rosalind creepy, predatory looks. And so, Rajal had a sense of like wanting to protect her, because not only was he, bonded to her through their Kui, she didn't have a Kui at that time. But he also had this protective streak because he wanted to protect her from the creepy dude. So it was a whole like thing where it's like once they got out of the thing, you know, and they got up top to the, you know, area that they knew, now it's like him trying to get her a quee, and so that way she doesn't die, because she was getting like weak and everything. And so it was okay. The things that kind of irritated me was there was this part in the book where he was kind of explaining to Rosalind the problem with Tia, because she was like, oh, I really like Tia. And, you know, me and some other people who have read this series are like, we don't like Tia. We don't like Tia. Because Tia is annoying. When she got dropped off on the planet, she was a teenager. I can understand her immaturity. I can understand that. I can understand her, you know, crying and getting upset and all that stuff. Teenager, get it. Totally get it. But, you know, when you go to, like, say, we're on Earth. There are different cultures here. There are different continents. There are different countries, different states. We all have different types of culture, you know, and different ways of doing things. You know, like in the South, if you say something like, bless your heart, you know, it's essentially an insult, you know. So if you go to France, if you don't speak the language, you need to learn the language, because it's, to me, I think of it as it's rude. It's rude to go into someone else's country and expect everyone to revolve around you and your ignorance. So if you go to another country, beforehand, know the language. Know the culture, know the language, know different things. It's the same thing with, like, essentially, say you're going to be introduced to the royals. There is certain etiquette that you need to know before you even talk to the royals. You know, otherwise it's like, you know, it's rude. You know, it's rude to not know some other person's etiquette and culture and the way of living. You know, it's good to learn it so that way you're being respectful to them. You know, you're being respectful. So with Tia, I felt like she was a disrespectful little brat. And, you know, the other women were trying to, like, tell her, like, hey, you know, you need to learn to become accustomed to this living arrangement. We can't leave this planet, so you have to learn to adapt to your surroundings. And so Tia was very much annoying throughout several of the books. So with this here, Rosalind had said something in the book where she had said, I really wanted to be strong and capable when we got here, just like Tia. So Rajal is silent, washing my other arm. His shoulders shake, and I stare at him in surprise. Is he laughing? What's so funny? So he says Tia was sent away a few years ago because she was causing problems amongst the hunters. She was free with her kisses and her teasing, and it made several males think she was interested in only them. She cried a lot. She had more tantrums than a kid, you know, than a child. So when you say that you wish to be more like Tia, I am glad you are not. So Rosalind says, sounds kind of chauvinist. And so I'm like, for me, I want to jump through this book and tell Rosalind, no, it's not. It's not chauvinist. This is the behavior of Tia. Tia acted a certain way. You may know her differently because she's matured, but when she came to that planet, she very much was irritating and annoying. So, I kind of laughed at that, and I can understand Rajal in that instance because he knows Tia. He knows Tia longer. He knows her behavior. So, like I said, when you go somewhere that has a different culture, you need to not be rude, and you need to know the culture, you know, and not expect them to bow to you in your culture. You know, not everybody's going to accept that. You know, like when you move into the US, like if you're living in a different country and you move into the US, you have to learn to acclimate to American culture. It's a different thing. American culture is going to be different than Canadian culture, or that's going to be different than European culture or African culture, you know, or Asian culture. It's all going to be different. When you come here to the US, we're very much a soup bowl. We have multiple cultures here. So, you know, whenever I'm introduced to somebody that, like, say I go and I meet some people who are like Taiwanese or something, I'm going to talk to them about their culture and their food and all this different stuff. What are things that they do with their food and things like that? I would want to know more about that because I'm curious. And, you know, the more you know about someone's culture, the more respectful you're going to be to that culture. So with Tia, I felt like she was very rude. And this is the problems I had with her, is like, you know, I understand your immaturity, but you get annoying when you don't want to listen, when you want to keep crying like a little baby, and you don't want to learn to adapt to your surroundings. Like if I go and I move to a different country, I'm going to obviously want to learn the language if there is a different language, which most places know English. There are most places out there, even in foreign countries, that do know English. Like, you know, the French will know English, Germany will know English, you know, and different stuff like that. But I also want to make sure I'm not coming in and stepping on their toes and saying, oh, you need to like conform to me because I'm a stupid American. No, I want to learn their culture. I want to be respectful as I can be and learn more about like other people and the things that they do. You know, that's something that I want to learn, you know, like I want to eat the food and I want to see what the food is like, you know, things like that. So you learn to adapt to your surroundings. So with her, she annoyed me. And so that was an annoying part in that book, was because of that. And I'm like, girl, you don't know Tia. I mean, she has matured, which I'm glad that Ruby Dixon's character, you know, has grown the character. So when it comes to Rosalind, she's a clone. So I felt sorry for her in a way because she has these memories that are not her own. They're not her own memories. They're memories from that person that she got cloned from. So in a sense, this book kind of made me sad because you have this character of Rosalind, whatever. That is sad because she's like, well, what purpose do I have? You know, now that I know I'm not this person, you know, I'm a clone, what purpose do I have? And so Rajal, you know, essentially tried to be there for her, but it's like there's only so much that you can do. And to me, I felt like Ruby Dixon could have reworked this book a little bit differently than how it was written. I think I would have appreciated if Rosalind was told right away, as soon as she woke up, look, I know this is weird, but you're on this planet, you know, we can't go back to Earth because Earth was destroyed, and you're a clone. So the memories that you have in your head are not your own. You need to learn how to be a whole new person, you know? So I think I would have appreciated that more than how we got it. How we had it to where it was like toward the middle of the book, she's told she's a clone and she goes into a bit of a depression. Understandable. Understandable. You know, you're essentially being told that the things that you remember are not true. And so now you have to go on with this life you have now. And not everybody can adjust, you know, and adjust quickly, you know, to stuff like that. You know, some people, it takes them a little while to adjust to different situations. So for her, I did feel sorry for her. I felt bad for her, and it kind of made the whole story kind of sad to me. And then you've got like world building with like this new like underground world that I was like, kind of like, how come the ancestors never went up to the surface? That just seems really weird to me, that they never went up to the surface ever. Okay, a little far-fetched. And then, you know, you're introduced to like more of these new characters, and then there's going to be the clones in the series, you know, and their storylines and everything. So yeah, it took me longer to read this book too. I really wanted it to be better than what it was, and so yeah, it's a shame too, because I really like the cover, and then there's a back cover to it that's really nice, that reminds me of like a Step Back and stuff like that. Really pretty, you know, cover, and like a back Step Back, but it's just, I really wished the story was better. I really wish that I liked it more. And that's why I ultimately ended up giving it a 3, was because of that. Okay, the last book I'm going to discuss before I wrap this up is DNF. So the last book I have read so far that I just was not a fan of is Gracie's Mom by Misty Walker. Now this one here, there were things that bugged me, and I ended up DNFing this book at like 44%. I kind of started skimming the book a little bit to see if it, you know, got a little better, and just didn't work for me. One thing I noticed about this is I felt like the author's writing style was very surface level. You know, there are other authors that have a way of like immersing me into a story, and this just didn't do that. This author just didn't do that. It just felt very surface level, and there was no no depth to the story, you know, and I wanted that depth. And I'm the type of person where I like the older woman, younger man romance, but this one here just didn't work. So we have the character of Abby, and she's 39. She got pregnant with her daughter when she was like 17, and so she decided to stay with the baby daddy, and things just didn't work out. It was like they had gotten married, and they were only married, I think, for like 2 or 3 years, and it just didn't work. So she was like basically single for a long time, and so Gracie, who was 22 and basically graduated from college, her and her roommate, who is this good-looking dude named Dax, her and her roommate, who were supposed to be like just friends, he even told her this. Dax told Gracie he was not interested in her that way. You know, he was just her friend. So even though Dax told her this, she still... Gracie still had a crush on Dax. So as soon as, like, it's very quickly that Gracie and Dax get to Abby's house, that Dax finally makes a move. He said he's had a crush on her for like 4 years, and, you know, 2 of those years he just wasn't having sex with any ladies. So they go right into having sex very quickly, and there was no build up. I would have preferred if there was a little bit of a build up, you know. And then also I felt like the character of Abby was very immature. Like there were times like she acted like mature mom and all this other stuff for her daughter, and then there were other times she acted like a shy schoolgirl, and I'm like, lady, you've had a child. Yeah, you had her at a young age, but you're a mature woman that, you know, all of this time she could have had, like all the 4 years that her daughter was in college, she could have had that time to date other men, you know. And I'm not talking about boys, I'm talking about men. So to me, it's just like, you had all this time to like date other guys, and she's just like shy, and I'm like, really? You're a 39-year-old woman, and you're acting a little more immature. Ooh, excuse me. Acting more immature than the 22-year-old, you know? So I just didn't like that aspect to it, where it's like, I want the woman to be mature, you know, to be mature and, you know, have like, you know, her life together. And it's like this woman's like, you know, has her own home, you know, and seems very mature. But then she has these unmature like moments with the guy. It's almost like she's going back to like being a teenager, like reverting back to be a teenager, and it's just like, it's weird. Then there was her neighbor, next door neighbor, who was basically like trying to live vicariously through Abby, because, you know, this woman is like around the same age as her, and she's like, you know, oh, you're having sex with this younger man and all that stuff, and I was just like, ugh. I feel like if I kept reading this book, I probably would have turned it into like a 2-star read, but that's why I ended up DNFing it, because the writing didn't work for me, the storyline, and then there was like parts of it like where he was doing like this dominance thing with her, like Dax was doing dominance with Abby, and I was like, really? We have to go into like a dominant, like, oh, I'm gonna spank you, and I'm just like, really? We have to go into that? I don't know. It just seemed like it was like extra. It was like extra that really just didn't need to be there, you know? I had another book by this author like a couple of years ago that was like a biker romance. I am not really much for biker romances. That's like one of the subgenres in romance that really just don't work for me. A lot of times biker romances are a miss for me because I don't like the language of like, you know, the bikers calling their ladies like old ladies, or like calling her like, or calling the women like other derogatory words, and I'm like, you know. So MC romances just don't really work for me, you know, because they're just, yeah, they just don't usually work. And a lot of times like there's always like illegal stuff that they're doing, and I'm just like, nah, I'm not into the legal stuff. I don't know. I don't ever think of myself being in the life of crime. It's just, even like the same thing could be said for like a mafia romance. A lot of times they're doing illegal stuff, and I'm just like, I'm not into the whole illegal stuff thing. I'm very much a Dudley Do-Right in society. I try to abide by the laws, you know, of, you know, my state and all that stuff, not stealing and all this other stuff, and not doing drugs or dealing drugs or guns or things like that. Not my thing, you know? So a lot of times it's hard for myself to immerse myself into like motorcycle club romances or like mafia romances, because it's not my type of content. So unfortunately for this one here, this was like something outside of like her motorcycle club series. I was like, well, let me check it out, because I do like older women, younger man romances. This just didn't work for me, and I was disappointed. So that sucked. But yeah, anyways, that's it for this video here. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. And I will see you all on the next video. All right. Bye.